Greetings, Deep Dive Podcast listeners. This is your boy, Sam Orum, coming at you with another episode of the Deep Dive Podcast. Man, we've had a great year so far, a great season 2 so far. It's really been funny. So many people have been empowered and contacting us about, the podcast, the guests, the messages. So we're going to continue to, just to grow, to expand, to continue to empower people. I'm just excited. I talk about this all the time. I talk about this with our guests. I also talk about this with our brand new Deep Dive Podcast Facebook group. We're excited as well. So many people have been really joining on to our message of empowerment, our message of entertainment, our vision for the future. We're going to continue to help people. We're going to continue to empower people. We're looking to inspire people. And for those of you who really want to be a part of the Deep Dive Podcast family, look, all you have to do is like, subscribe, share, download, any way that you can connect with the Deep Dive Podcast through any podcast platforms. We're going to be excited to welcome you. We're going to be excited to empower you and just share some things with you in terms of what does prosperity mean? What is a message of prosperity? Have some fun in the process. We got a lot of things that's coming up in season 2 that I know you're going to be excited about. I wanted to take a brief moment this evening to really share with you something that I feel is important as I converse with people around the country, even people around the globe. I started hearing some things that, it put me in the mindset of, what is it that people really need and what is it that is prohibiting them from attaining those needs. And as I interviewed people, you guys know I interviewed so many people for the book, The Mindset of a Champion, and studied so many people. One of the things that I really want to talk about tonight and highlight is the fact that in a lot of instances, in a lot of cases, we're doing more harm to ourselves than other people are. If you've taken a listen or look at the previous episode of the Deep Dive Podcast, we talked about how to eliminate negativity out of your lives, how to kind of clear up your cup, if you will. If you haven't had an opportunity to take a look or take a listen to that particular podcast, please go back and take a look or listen at the Deep Dive Podcast.live. Also, you can see the video version at the Deep Dive Podcast with Sam Orum on YouTube. Take a look at that podcast, eliminating negative things or emptying negative things out of your lives, because I think that's a prelude to what we're going to talk about tonight, which is, what habits could be destroying your harvest. Think about that 1 second. What habits could be destroying your harvest? You have to understand this, that when you're created, there is actually an end game for everybody's lives. There is something that everyone is put on earth to accomplish. And in order to accomplish those things, there are a series of things that you must do. We talk about that in the episode called Building Capacity. There are a series of things that you have to do to make yourself bigger and stronger and faster and greater in what it is that you're doing. But, have you ever been in a situation where you would say, well, what's taking me so long, or why is it so difficult? It's because a lot of times your habits are actually blocking or preventing your harvest, or at the very least, it is slowing down the progression toward the harvest. So I wanted to talk a bit tonight about a few habits that we can change or control, or at least be aware of, so that we can expedite the process to us attaining that harvest, expedite the process to us identifying our purpose. And then that helps open the door for a quality of life that we're also seeking. So if you're taking notes, and I know most of you are, I want you to jot down a few things. Some of these may be appropriate or directly related to you. Some of them may not be. But I think if you continue to just build your mindset through all of these podcasts that we're doing with my guests and myself, if you continue to build your mindset, one thing that you will understand, even if some of these things may not directly apply to you, you have to realize that we're talking about empowerment of people. So you need the information and the knowledge and the wherewithal to learn these things and to consume these things so that you can change other people's lives. You have to realize and understand that the more you empower people, the more that you bless people, the more that you give, the more that you receive. And you don't give for receiving, but just giving freely opens the doors for you to be able to do some other things. So, certainly want to jot this down and consume this information for yourself. Extract what you need, learn what you don't need, and teach it to someone else. Okay. One of the first things that I believe we can do, one of the first habits that I believe we can change. Matter of fact, let me even identify what's considered a habit before I even get into that first point. What's considered a habit? A habit. Well, when the cost of something is greater than the benefit, and you're doing some things that will prevent that benefit, then that is actually considered a bad habit. When you're doing some things that are costly and it prevents that harvest, it prevents a benefit, it prevents that purpose, it slows down the purpose or slows down the harvest. So those are things that you have to be aware of when you're considering what is a bad habit. Because sometimes, believe it or not, people have bad habits and they don't think they're bad habits, but they are. And some things become a part of you that you try to work on. It's just subconscious. I know a lot of times doing the podcast, and I've been transparent, I really hate looking at myself on video. I hate listening to the sound of my voice. I just do. And when I hear myself, a lot of times I'm doing the ums and the ahs and all these type things. Those are unconscious habits, right? Doesn't mean anything, doesn't hurt anything, but it's just something that I would like to perfect in order to just become a better podcaster or a better communicator. Well, some of these habits that I'm going to talk about, these can be critical to your success, whether it's business, whether it's relationships, whether it's just personal development. These habits can be critical toward that. One of the first things I want to identify is, a bad habit. Sometimes people have a bad habit of just hanging around naysayers, hanging around negative people. A lot of times people are inherently negative just by nature. I don't know why it is, but people are just typically negative in a lot of cases. And that, guys, drive me absolutely batty, because all of my mentors, they always have taught me the power of positivity. I sound like the new day in WWE right now, the power of positivity. But, all of my mentors talk to me about the power of positivity, because you can feed your mind. I've said this before in previous episodes, that the mind can only occupy one thought at a time. So if you're thinking negatively, then there's no room for positive thoughts in your mindset. Well, hanging out with naysayers, you got to spend less time with negative people. Naysayers, spend more time with people who are supporting your vision, supporting your dream, trying to uplift what you do. I always tell people this, I know you've heard this phrase, misery loves company. I tell people that misery hates to lose company. What does that mean? That means people who are living a miserable type life or situation or environment, they would rather you stay there with them and wallow in that misery and that pity, as opposed to seeing you progress and them being happy for you. They would rather you be in that miserable situation with them. Why? Because it's going to make them feel good. It's going to make them feel good. In my previous company, I used to tell people this all the time, that, when we're talking to people about empowering their lives and changing their lives, I ran into situations time and time again where husbands did not want me or my business partners to speak to their wives about business. They just didn't. And for a long time, I didn't understand why is that the case. Because, we're trying to empower her to empower the household. Why is it that you don't want us to talk to your wife? Well, it was simple. They noticed that we were an example of what they were not doing. Let me say that again. They noticed that we were examples of what they were not doing. In other words, they weren't taking care of their home or doing the things that they need to do, or, changing their family's lives or getting money as an issue out of their way. They weren't doing those type things, right? So when they saw us coming talking to their wives about starting their own business and empowering themselves. And they saw this personal growth in their wives, and they saw their wives start to, dress better and speak better and, hold their heads up and, have more confidence in what it is that they were doing. Oh no, they didn't like that. They didn't like that at all, because we were an example of what they weren't doing. They weren't doing that in their own household. Well, that's what I mean when I say misery hates to lose company. These husbands would have rather that their wives stayed in that house in the misery and dealing with the lack, as opposed to allowing them, I don't even want to say allow, that's not even the right word, but supporting them as they try to, to empower themselves or bring in more income or whatever it may be. But I would tell them, straight up, you guys know how I am. I would tell them straight up, look, either you join this, bandwagon of empowerment, you look to grow, or you're going to lose this wife, because once a mind has been expanded, it'll never settle for going back to the original state. So once these ladies understood that they were bigger than their circumstances and their situations, then they became beasts. I'm telling you, they became the best of the best. That's what I mean in terms of that. So, for you, just make sure that you limit the conversations or just being around naysayers or negative people. Another bad habit, and this is one of my bad habits, it's that's watching too much TV. Watching too much TV. That's one of my bad habits. Now, I don't have a lot of time to watch TV or things of that nature, but anytime I can sneak it in, I do. But let me tell you, that's a bad habit, because one of the things you do, you waste a lot of time. I heard Oprah Winfrey say this once before, but people gave her or give her so many accolades about her success and all the great things that she has done and still doing to this day. And they just continue to edify her and give her these accolades. And she just flat out said one day, look, every single person have 24 hours in a day, right? My 24 hours is no different than your 24 hours, other than what am I doing with my 24 hours and what are you doing with your 24 hours? Think about that, guys. If you're utilizing 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 hours a day of your 24 hours just watching television or doing something non-productive, then that's going to take away. That's a bad habit that's going to take away from your harvest. It's going to take away from that end result. We have a finite amount of hours on this earth, and we don't know when that finality will come, right? So we have to be able to understand that we need to maximize, our productive time and minimize our casual time. Now, what I will say for me, what I typically do every day, I write my goals. The previous night, I write down everything that I need to do for the next day. All of my goals that I need to do for the next day. And I prioritize those goals from most important to least important. If I have to have a Zoom conference call or a meeting or something with international business or things of that nature, those may be at the top of my to-do list for a particular day. Or if I may need to, pick up the dry cleaning or do something simple, then that may be at the bottom of my to-do list. But here's the thing. Once you've accomplished all of your goals for that particular day, whether it takes you 5 hours, 10 hours, or the entire day, right? Then the rest of that time, once you finish your goals, you can do whatever it is you want to do, including watching television. And that's what I typically would do. I would wait until I'm done with all of my daily goals, and then I would do whatever I want to do. And if that includes watching television, then that's what I'll do. But I will caution you on this. Sometimes be aware of what you're watching on television, because TV can vex your spirit. There's nothing good on the news. I mean, I never hear anything good on the news. Political television is all lies and posture. I don't care who the politician is, and I apologize to my politician friends who may be listening in on this podcast. I don't believe anything a politician say on any side of the aisle. That's just me personally. Why is that the case? Because the whole notion of succeeding in politics mean that you have to put someone else down. In a lot of cases, you have to lie about that in order to do what you need to do. So that negative stuff, the news and all that, CNN, MSNBC and all that stuff, Fox News, I don't listen to that stuff because it's tribal. It is tribal now. Everybody has, pretty much gotten into their own tribal groups. And as opposed to working together, living together, and coexisting, everybody is so tribal. And that just means there's a whole lot of negative stuff that's going on the television set. Well, understand that your spirit can be vexed. Even in entertainment television, I'm gonna let y'all in on a little insight with me with this TV thing. So I recently ran across this television show that Tyler Perry has on BET Plus called Ruthless, right? Oh my God, this if you talking about something that's sadistic and crazy, and I mean I kind of like it a little bit, but it can vex your spirit. It's some stuff in there. I'm like it ain't for the weak at heart. I'm telling you that's some stuff. I don't know where he get that stuff from. It's entertaining, but it's not something that you want to, permeate your spirit. I'll just put it that way. So you have to be careful. I'll watch it with one eye covered, one eye open, and one eye closed, because that stuff can be crazy, right? So just be aware. If you have done your goals and you want to watch a little television, just be aware of what you're putting inside your spirit. You can break that habit easily. Just find something that's going to, if you need to entertain yourself with television, then find something that's going to empower or uplift you. Another bad habit is doing things at the last minute. I just don't understand this. Waiting for the last minute to do everything. I don't get it. I don't get it. Some people, if they're 5 minutes late, they think they're on time. Or if they're 10 minutes late, it's like, what's the problem? It's only 10 minutes. Well, you tell that airplane that when it's time for that airplane to take off, right? Doing things in a timely manner, especially if it's a habit, it can become very powerful. And also, to be honest with you, that's one of the things that will give you more time to do the things that you need to do if you have some kind of structure and organization in your life. Someone told me, and I'm not gonna call any names because I know they're listening in on this podcast, but they said something to the effect of, why you have to, sleep and wake up 15 minutes before it's time you need to get up, and then you press the snooze alarm and you press it again 5 minutes later and you press it again, and then you end up late. Why don't you just set it 15 minutes prior to that? Just get up 30 minutes earlier. What is that extra 15 minutes going to do? Now I know I can hear people all everywhere like, yeah, I need that extra 15 minutes, but not really. Not really. It's more of a mind thing than anything else. For me, as a business owner, and I sit on a lot of boards. One of the things that I always look for, if it's talking about hiring practices, if it's talking about whatever it may be from a positive or business standpoint, being timely is one of those mechanisms for me that will let me know whether or not you're serious about your business or serious about your life. I mean, that's one of my pet peeves. Anybody that know me know that you can set your clock by what I tell you in terms of time. You can actually do that, because at the end of the day, for me, being on time shows integrity. Being late all the time shows a lack of integrity. Now, this is just me. This is just how I feel. It's my opinion. But, if I tell somebody I'm going to do something or be somewhere at a certain time or do something in a timely manner, then that's what I'm going to do. Why? Because I want to live and operate in integrity and with integrity. The absence of that lacks integrity to me. You're trying to do business and you tell people that, do something at a certain time or do this at a certain time. This guy from Africa, he hit me up on LinkedIn a few weeks ago, and he wanted to interview me for something that he was doing in African television, and he wanted to interview me, and I'm like, okay, cool, I'll do it. We set up the Zoom and all of this other kind of stuff, and got prepared, and I'm sitting on Zoom, and it was at the top of the hour, time to start, and this guy still hadn't logged in. And then about 5 minutes after, I just disconnected. And then he hit me up on the phone. Hey, brother, I apologize. I'm a little bit late and, blah, blah, blah. No, player. This interview is over. This interview is over. If you don't have enough integrity or respect for me to start something on time that you asked me to do, I don't know how you operate in Africa, But in Atlanta, we operated well, no, I ain't gonna say Atlanta. These fools, they late every day too. But y'all know what I'm saying, right? I just operated integrity, and look, 5 minutes after I'm gone, I've off that Zoom, and he's been calling me and hitting me up and still want to reschedule that interview. I'm not gonna do it. I'm absolutely not gonna do it. I'm only gonna associate myself with things that, you know, accentuates integrity, right? That's just me. Again, all of these things are just me. This is why this is a solo podcast. This is just me. You may differ in an opinion, but I tell you what, these things, these habits have served me well, just in being able to do what I say when I say I'm going to do it. All right. Something else is, and we talked about this again last week, and I'm going to probably say something about this on every podcast, and that's focusing in on the negative. So many people, man, that's a habit you got to break. You have to break that habit, focusing in on the negative. I'm not going to get too much into that because I did a whole podcast on it last week. But guys, if you suffer from that negative thinking, you gotta shake that habit. You absolutely have to. I can't think of any scenario where it serves you well to always be negative. And it literally drives me crazy every time certain people open their mouths. If they're talking, they're saying something negative, or they're talking about somebody, or they're doing something like that. Okay, it's okay to occasionally vent. That's okay. But if everything that you do and your entire being is about being negative, you gotta, no, come on. I run away from those type people. I remember going to Anthony Robbins' Mastery University several years ago. And one of the things he said, and I believe this, if you see negative, toxic people and they coming around you, run from them. Don't walk fast, just run from them, because that negativity can become contagious. To the contrary, though, positive things can become contagious. If you get around people who are positive, who have a positive outlook on life, who really understands, the value of certain things, and even the struggle, even a struggle is a positive thing in certain instances, because it's going to give you the ability to grow and to learn and to be better. Success is not the end result, it's the journey. It is absolutely the journey. So sometimes when you're dealing with negative things, that is to be expected, but you can spin that to a positive just by understanding that it's a part of growth. But when people are just talking about negative stuff, and here's something I've said before, and people sent me some nasty stuff when I said this, but the fact that I'm about to say it again, that tells you I didn't care that they sent me some nasty stuff. But a lot of times I hear people, especially in the Black community, and this is another excuse, by the way, they're always talking about, they can't get ahead because of the man, or they can't get ahead because of them, or what they're doing, or how they do this, and all of this kind of stuff. First of all, I said this last week. Who is they? Well, they said you shouldn't take the vaccine. Who is they? Who are these people that you're talking about, always referring to as they? Well, they said you shouldn't do. Who is they? You have the capacity to think on your own. So do just that. Do your research. There's no reason to be, let me say this in a proper manner, intellectually lacking. There's no reason to be that way today with all of the technology in terms of Google and all of these other apps and things that can make you smart and educated if you just take the initiative. Don't worry about what they say. Find and do the research yourself. Don't worry about the man. What can you do to become better? Because here's my thing. Okay, let's just say they are doing this to you, and the man is doing this to you, and all these other things. Here's my question. What are you going to do about it? Because just talking about what they're doing, what does that accomplishes nothing. That accomplishes absolutely nothing. So what are you going to do about it? I don't want to hear the complaining. What are you going to do about it? So don't focus on the negative stuff. Always look for a solution. Okay. Another habit that we have to, I don't want to say eliminate, but at least curtail, and that is the amount of time we engage with social media. Now, I know all of you, believe it or not, if you're listening to this podcast or you're listening to looking at the video version, you're engaging in social media. So there is a positive platform for social media. My sister does business, and she's always on social media, both of them, always on social media. But that's how they get their business, right? I understand that. But I'm just talking about when you're on social media and there's no purpose, behind being on social media. And that stuff can be addictive, just like for hours and hours. Something popped on my phone the other day, and I'm not a big social media guy, but something popped on my phone. I don't even know how this stuff gets there. And I started looking at it, and it was like it's called a reel, Reel. Y'all probably know what I'm talking about much more than I do. And I'm like, okay, what is this thing? And I looked at it. I'm laughing. Okay, this was funny. And then it says something like, slide up to view the next reel. I'm like, okay. And so I swiped the little thing up, and they had another little clip of somebody doing something, or kids dancing, and then it swiped up again. Man, I found myself 30 minutes later still swiping up, looking at these reels. I'm like, man, and I caught myself. It's like, hold up, player. You got some things you need to be doing. You can't be sitting here looking at these reels. It's funny. Some of it entertaining. They got this little dance called Mufasa or Mustafa or something like that. And they say that, and these little kids start dancing, and old people start dancing, and dogs start dancing, and everybody. And I'm like, that's kind of funny. But it serves no purpose. It's not doing anything in terms of getting me closer to my goals. But 30 minutes went by just like that. I mean, just literally just swiping and looking at those reels. So you have to be aware of this whole, social media thing. Another bad habit that you want to kind of eliminate is worrying about what's going to go wrong. What's going to go wrong? There's a guy in my business, one of my businesses, and I'm not going to call any name because, again, he's probably listening to this podcast. But this guy, he's always trying to find out what's going to go wrong with his business. Always trying to find out, well, if this happened, this going to go wrong. If this happened, and you know what started to happen? He, because he is a blessed brother. Now this sounds crazy, but just bear with me. Because he is a blessed brother, he is anointed. He typically receives things that he asks for because he is an anointed person. He is blessed, right? And you have to be careful, even understanding that, because when you are an anointed person, when you are a blessed person and you have the ability to call things to your life, you do realize that you have the ability to call negative things into your life, right? I hope you understand that from an intellectual standpoint. If you have the ability and the blessing to call good things into your life, then there is no distinction between calling good and bad things, because you have been blessed with the ability to call things into your life. So what does that mean? Every time he was like, well, what if this go wrong with my business? Or what if this go wrong? It never fails. It happened. It happens. You know why? It sounds crazy. It happens because he's blessed. He's calling these things into his life. My mentor, you guys hear me say this probably on every podcast because, this is how I got to where I am, but he's passed on, Dr. Miles Monroe. He told me once, Sam, be careful about asking and praying for a miracle. I'm like, what do you mean? Dr. Monroe, what do you mean be careful about praying for a miracle? I want a miracle in my life. Like, be careful, brother. He's saying it in his Bohemian accent. It's like, be careful, brother, because when you're praying for a miracle to come into your life, you're also praying for catastrophe. What do you mean, Dr. Monroe? What do you mean I'm praying for catastrophe? In order for there to be a miracle, there has to be a catastrophe. I'm like, wow, that's deep. In order for there to be a miracle, there has to be a catastrophe. There can be no miracle without a catastrophe. So he's like, be careful, brother. I can still hear him saying that. Be careful, brother. You keep talking about praying for a miracle. You're creating catastrophe. That's what happens when you're always worrying about what can go wrong. Use that same energy to figure out how to make it right, whatever it may be. It goes back to what I was saying earlier about, them and they and the man. Don't worry about what they're doing. How can you circumvent their situation or that situation with what you're doing. Okay, so be very aware of that, talking about what can go wrong. Something else that's a lot of people do that's a bad habit, and we'll start wrapping this up because I could talk about this stuff all day, all night, all week, all year. Something else, trying to change someone's opinions is fruitless. It's fruitless in a lot of instances. What I typically would do is I'll share information. And again, I'm just giving you my story and my opinion. Different people think differently, but I'll try to educate you on whatever point I'm trying to make. And I'm only going to do that maybe once or twice. I don't get into convincing mode. I just can't. I don't do all of this crazy stuff trying to change your mind and convince you. I try to educate you. I give it to you. You can take what you want, chew out the meat, spit out the bone. And beyond that, guys, you cannot try to change someone's opinion. As a matter of fact, something else you can't do. You can't argue with someone's opinion. That's why everything I'm saying on this podcast, and I keep telling you it's my opinion, it's not debatable. You can't debate it because it's my opinion. It doesn't mean I'm right. It just means it can't be debated. Two things you cannot debate. You can't debate a fact, and you can't debate someone's opinion. So even if I'm in a conversation with somebody and it can be heated and it can be going back and forth and they say, well, look, in my opinion, this is what I think, I immediately shut up. Because as soon as they say, in my opinion, then it's only a conversation from that point on. You cannot debate it. I cannot debate anybody's opinion. I can disagree with it, but I cannot debate it, right? So be careful with trying to change someone's opinion. It is a waste of time. Do what you can to educate people. Do what you can to enlighten them in certain cases, but don't try to change their opinion because, it is their opinion. Something physically you can do to break a bad habit that's going to help you in terms of your harvest is actually, a lot of people don't get enough sleep. Now, I can tell you, and there are varying opinions on this as well, but I think it's very important for you to get a significant or sufficient amount of sleep, because your body, your mindset, it needs to regenerate. It needs to be refreshed. I know people, I've heard Steve Harvey say this. I've heard some of my peers say this, that look, nothing come to people who sleep but a nightmare. Well, that may be true, but I'm going to get me some sleep. I'm going to get me some sleep. Here's why I think people don't have enough time. And I'll say this to Steve Harvey or to anybody. Here's why I think people need more sleep. I mean, the people that say I need to work from, sun up to sun up, 8 to faint, all these things. Here's why I think you need to work that hard. Because you're not good at planning. You're not good at planning. If you're good at planning, I don't care what it is, you should have a significant or sufficient amount of time to do what you need to do, which will allow for you to have a sufficient amount of time to sleep. If you always got to work all the way through the night and to feel like that's the only way you're going to get your goals done, then it's probably because you don't have good planning, strategic planning. So I would suggest that just try it out in terms of planning so that you can get more sleep, refresh that mind, refresh that, that spirit, the energy in the body. Now, I don't mean you got to sleep 12 hours. I don't mean anything like that. But some people like, if I can get 2 hours of sleep, I'm good. No, you're not good. And I can tell you, as I get a little bit older here and there, every time I get a little bit older, I can tell you, you want to wish you had that sleep, right? You need to have that sleep. So that's very important. And then the last thing is, a lot of people, they always feel like they have to say yes to everything. You got to break that habit. You got to break that habit in terms of always feeling, you got to say yes to everybody. Somebody say, can you take me to the grocery store? Yes. Or can you do this? Yes. Or can you do this? Yes. And it's okay to be generous with your time. It's okay to be generous with certain things that you're doing, but you got to be strategic. Strategic is not the word. You got to be mindful of how you do certain things. Got to be mindful of how there's even wisdom in giving, right? There is wisdom in giving. You can't just give. You have to have a level of wisdom in how you do that. not just for your benefit, but in a lot of cases for the benefit of the person that you're trying to help. You have to be able to do that, so just always remember, it's okay to say no sometimes to people. And again, all of these habits that I'm talking about tonight was derived from conversations that I've had with people over the last few weeks. And that's one of the things. A good friend of mine who, does empowerment as well, it finds it quite difficult to just tell people no. I'm kind of like that too, a little bit. I must confess, I'm a little bit like that as well. And I can hear the entire deep dive podcast audience grasping like he is lying, but no, I'm not lying. Sometimes it's difficult for me to say no to people. I mean, I'll just leave it at that. But you have to understand, because a lot of times when you continuously do things for people, you can stunt their growth. Again, we said this earlier, adversity builds growth. It builds character. Sometimes you need to grow through some things in order to become a better you, and it can stunt people's growth. So, make sure that use your kids. If you got kids, use your kids for an example. This is a perfect example. Should have thought of this earlier. But you can't always tell your kids yes to everything that they want. You can't do that. Because it may be something that's going to adversely affect them, right? So you got to be able to sometimes tell your kids no, even if it hurts you. You know it's going to hurt them because they don't understand. But even if it hurts you, you got to be able to tell them no. It's the same thing with adults. It's the same thing with business people. I was telling one of my business partners that I don't have a problem in walking away from a deal. I don't have a problem with that at all, because if it's not going to benefit me or the people who I'm representing, then I don't have a problem saying no. I'm not going to do that. I'll walk away from it. I've done that before. Sometimes it came back to bite me a little bit, but I stood on my principles and my morals and the things that I typically do, and just like, no, I'm not going to do that. I was able to say no. You got to be able to do that, guys. So create your own list. Let me give you some homework as we close out this podcast. Create your own list of what you feel are negative habits or bad habits that may be causing you to not reach your harvest. I'm serious about this. Just write down, let's just say 10 things, 10 habits. And I would love to hear some of those habits from some of you. Just shoot me a quick email to info@thedeepdivepodcast.live, not .com, but .live. Shoot me an email and just say, hey, look, these are some of the habits I have. I'm looking to, get better on. I may even try to reply. Sometimes I can. It'd be so many emails, but I may try to reply to a few people. But at the very least, journalize those habits. Shoot me an email. Let me know. Hey, look, or even if it's some advice I can share just from my own perspective, I'll share some advice with you, because I think this is going to be critical as we move forward through the rest of this deep dive podcast season and you moving through the rest of this year. I think it's going to be critical that we eliminate the negative, which we talked about last week, continue to eliminate bad habits, replace those bad habits with good habits and that type thing. And I think it'll serve us well as we close out this year. We're attempting to hit our goals and, getting ready for 2023 and even beyond. All right. So hopefully tonight's episode enlightened you on a few things, but I'm serious about those writing down those bad habits. Shoot me an email. If you need to ask a question or some advice, nothing lengthy, just something short. And I'll be happy to, if I can get to everybody, I'll be happy to shoot you an email back. And we're just going to continue to converse and make this happen. Those of you who have not already joined our newly formed Deep Dive Podcast Facebook group, you want to go to the Deep Dive Podcast. You may have to put my name because I think there are multiple Deep Dive Podcasts, but Deep Dive Podcast Facebook group, and join the Facebook group. We're going to have so much fun this season. I have some surprises in store that's just for the Facebook group audience. I'm excited about that. Even tonight's episode, you guys are always the Facebook group is always gonna, I have the advantage of getting some things and knowing some things and interacting with some of our guests even this season that the masses won't have. So join our Facebook group at the Deep Dive Podcast with Sam Orum on Facebook. Also, please go to the website. Take a look at the website. All of the episodes are on the website, the Deep Dive Podcast.live, Live, the Deep Dive Podcast.live. Go to the website, look around, look at some of the past episodes. And I'm gonna ask somebody for a favor. I don't typically ask people for a favor. When I ask somebody for a favor, I love to drink 1 cup of coffee a day. I don't drink a lot of coffee, but I drink 1 cup of coffee a day. My company actually has CBD coffee, and I drink a cup every day. Go to my website, the Deep Dive Podcast.live, and you'll see a coffee cup. It's probably in the left corner of the screen. And just buy your boy a cup of coffee. Just buy your boy a cup of coffee. You'll see that coffee. Just click it. Buy your boy a cup of coffee. I'm asking that for a reason. I'm just not literally really asking people to buy me a cup of coffee, but I'm asking you that for a reason. Because the people who buy me a cup of coffee got something for you. Later on in the season, but I got something for you. That's a cliffhanger. All right. So look, guys, we're going to get on out of here tonight. I know it's getting late. A lot of people want to close out the Thursday. So I appreciate you guys getting on the podcast. Hopefully this is something that can empower you. Look forward over the next few weeks. I'm going to put together a series of empowerment podcasts. I told you guys last season that this season we would do more in terms of coaching and teaching and empowerment. As most of you know, I am an executive life coach, and I talk to a lot of business owners and people and bishops and pastors and princes and kings and all these people. But the thing that I'm learning, and again, this goes back to the book, The Mindset of a Champion, is the way people think is the way they act. The way they act is the way they grow. The way they grow is the way they live. I want to start teaching you through these podcasts, a little bit at a time. Like we said, music, polka a polka, right? I want to teach you a little bit at a time about how to continue to grow. So I think I'm going to do maybe even a 10-part series of empowerment on some of the things that I'm coaching some of these champions on, so that we can use them in our everyday lives. So go to the website, the deepdivepodcast.live, join our Facebook group. We're on every podcast platform now that you can imagine. I don't think there's any podcast platforms out there that we're not on. So like, subscribe, download, and share. Support this podcast, because the more you support, I'm sure you can already notice that season 2 has been much better than season 1. And season 3 is going to be much better than this season, but it's only because of you. So I thank you. And last thing is I want to make sure I thank our international audience. Because we're in America, I always tend to lean toward the domestic American ideology. But I have to remember, and I don't take for granted, that we're actually airing in over 170 countries, 172 to be exact. And last week when I looked at the numbers, I was surprised. I think it was my numbers, but 30% of the audience was in America. That was the highest number of the 100%. 30% was in America, but 29% was in the Congo. I was blown away. I'm like, really? I think that was my podcast. It was one of the podcasts, but 30% US, 29% Congo, and then you got all these other countries. Look, guys, thank you so much for your support. Some of you have to even translate this podcast to even enjoy it, and I don't take that for granted, so I certainly appreciate it. We're going to keep doing some things. As a matter of fact, I have a guy that I'm going to bring on as a guest in a couple of weeks or so. He is in Central Europe, and he's a part of my area out there in Central Europe, and I'm going to have him on as a guest in about, I guess, a couple of weeks or so. So you'll get a chance to get an international flavor and get some love for our international Deep Dive podcast listeners. So thank you guys so much. Thank all of you for joining us. Again, don't forget to like, subscribe, download, and share. With that, I appreciate you joining us on another episode of the Deep Dive podcast. God bless you, and I'll see you on the beaches of the world.